Most merciful God of cinema, I confess that I have sinned against you in thought, word, and deed. I have not loved my neighbors myself. Specifically, I made my panel watch Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend. I have not loved you with my whole heart. I rewatched Godard dismantle cinema itself for 105 minutes, and I loved every minute of it. I am truly sorry that I learned absolutely nothing from this experience and will probably do it again. Amen.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
What is even happening right now?
I know.
I'm Aaron Brown.
I'm Jennifer Trujillo.
I am Sheila Blume.
I'm Aaron Drummond, and this is World Cinema History.
Hey, wait a minute, Junior. Where you going?
Oh, after that scene with those slave girls, the road to Zanzibar's calling me. What a project.
Listen, Dopey, don't you know that Zanzibar's in Africa?
Africa, that's it. Let's go.
Now, wait a minute. Calm yourself, Robert. Do all of your pictures affect you in this way?
Oh, sure. After the road to Singapore, I went to Singapore. After Cat and the Canary, I went to the zoo. After Ghost Breakers, I went to visit Paulette Goddard. Ho, 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 ho. Come on, Johnny. Bing's waiting for us in the boat, and we'll take everybody with us on the road to Zanzibar. He must have seen the pictures.
So, you guys didn't like it?
You definitely both almost got a text of, what am I watching?
I'm a little hurt. I came here expecting us to celebrate the pinnacle of the picaresque. I thought we'd all be vibrating on the same frequency, but the energy in this room, it's very pre-1960s. I'm disappointed. Truly.
You suck, you jackass.
I regret nothing.
After 6 months of me saying Jean-Luc Godard is poopy and I hate him, here I am, defending the man who killed cinema. I disgust even myself. I assume you all did the prerequisite reading of Friedrich Engels' The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State, or are we going to let me down on that too?
No.
Did not know that was part of the assignment, you fucker.
Unbelievable! I'm the biggest anti-communist in the room, and the only one who did the homework, and you call yourself a socialist. Now, admittedly, I haven't read Engels since college, but neither, I suspect, had Godard. But if my memory is correct, Engels says that humanity moves through 3 phases: savagery, barbarism, and civilization. In this film, Godard is running this in reverse using a picaresque device. Now, traditionally, the picaresque is a genre that follows a rogue, a picaro, usually from the lower classes, who survives by his wits in a corrupt society. It is a series of episodic adventures where the hero stays the same while the world around him changes. But Godard gives us 2 rich monsters acting like rats. He inverts the genre. The civilized are the ones who became the rogues. I thought you'd find that subversive and thrilling. Apparently, I was wrong.
Yep. I mean, I see the point you're making, sort of, but other than maybe the really cool, what seems like a long one shot of the cars and the traffic accident and the drive-bys, okay, that was crazy, but yeah, what in the world?
Do you feel like this had a more complicated plot than the films that we normally do in this? Because I think this is the most simply plotted, most high-concept film that we've covered probably in the history of this podcast going back 3 years.
I mean, I guess it's a pretty straightforward line or simple thing.
It's the same plot as Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark or Hunt for Red October. We have to get to the place to do the thing, but shit is going to try and stop us. It is as high concept as it gets.
I'm hearing that. This rogue from the class has to survive by their wits in society and a series of episodic adventures.
Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go, to poison our dad.
And bludgeon our mother-in-law, our mother, and eat our spouse.
And then get kidnapped by cannibals, with one of them getting eaten and the other one joining the cannibals. Yes. Very simple.
Yeah.
Very straight.
I don't recall Princess Leia spending a good 5 minutes describing the most explicit fanfic style sexual encounter to Darth Vader.
Obviously, you haven't seen the fanfic version of Star Wars that I have. But...
I'm sure it exists.
On the Jabba the Hutt scenes or others?
Oh God, yeah, I'm sure it exists. I don't want to know. Rule 34. I don't need to seek that out, and I don't want to.
You don't, Aaron. For you, I strongly advise, do not.
I will not. I will not.
Don't you find it interesting how Godard never, in these 1960s films, and we discussed this briefly in Breathless, uses nudity, even though he would have been able to by this time? You know, when you compare this to the previous year's films like Blow Up, which had, you know, a ton of female nudity. Godard has the pair backlit. The scene is only described, which, Sela, you can testify to this, is obviously Godard parodying the scene in Persona with Bibi Anderson and her confession on the beach, but they're backlit. You can barely see that she's in her bra and panties, and anytime the description gets erotic or in any way titillating, he raises the music so that it's almost impossible for you to hear. You have to strain and work for it so much it almost becomes not worth it for any kind of sexual titillation. Later, when she's shown in a bath, he has her completely covered up so that you cannot see her breasts, but to point out to the audience, hey, this is what I'm doing, there is a painting of a woman with her breasts sticking out right behind her, as if to say, as
correct.
If Godard was saying, I could show you nudity, but I'm choosing not to.
While doing it.
That's the Godard way. He has his cake, he eats his cake, he has his cake, he eats his cake. And that's the end of cinema. Sela, you've been quiet on this. Did you find this a film that was hard to follow in any way, shape, or form? Because as I was saying to Jennifer and Aaron, I really think this is as close to a high concept, straightforward narrative of any film that we've covered.
I find we rely too much on story. We want a story to be told. And I think that is perhaps the key situation here. On one side, our expectation to read a story as a story, and the fact that when he's not giving us one as fluidly as we usually know it, and even as he usually gives it to us, because in Breathless, it was a very clear storyline. But through this expectation, we might comment on this film, and I don't think it's a problem that the film is not doing anything, or if you are expecting, I'm not saying that any of us is, but I think it's intrinsically in the human condition to follow with the intentionality of finding where is the story. And when we say story, we are obviously addressing what is the punchline. I don't think it's difficult to follow. I just don't know what I'm following. I have no problems with the film, generally speaking. There's a couple of things that I have difficulties with, but generally speaking, I think it's a very interesting experiment. And like we have mentioned a couple of times before, when we consider that this film was made in 1967, or at least released in that year, you have to consider what was going on in the world in the 60s. And this is a very, very clear picture of what was going on. We were confused, we were partying, we were intellectualizing everything, we were discussing things, we were complaining about things. I read somewhere that they are on their way to whatever they want to go to, and the whole world dismantles in front of their eyes while they're trying to get to where they want to go to. And I disagree with that, because I think they're dismantling themselves, and actually they are dismantled before they start going there. Basically, for me, it's a parallel.
Yeah, there are two interpretations of this film. One says that it's a post-apocalyptic world, and the other says that they bring they're bringing the apocalypse with them.
Yeah.
That as this bourgeois couple travels down the road, the havoc that they wreak is expressed around them. And then there's a third interpretation, which I don't know whether I agree or disagree with, which is that Godard is saying, no, this is the world that we live in, open your eyes. accidents. I'm showing you the traffic accident, but do you really go more than a couple of days without passing at least one traffic accident? And if you drove that far from Paris to, I can't remember the name of the city that they're going to go kill their dad and their mom in, wouldn't you see at least this many traffic accidents? Aren't I just showing you what you as a society have become numb to?
This is very, very French. The traffic is very French. The cars are very French. The attitudes of everybody is very French. So, to me, he's not really speaking about what the world is, but he's speaking about the French way. And this, for me, is probably the most amazing, beautiful thing of the film. This promenade, if you want to call it that, this slow movement of the camera, the trajectory of the whole traffic, if you can call that traffic, because nobody's moving.
Well, let's make it clear for the audience. At the 16-minute mark, there is an almost 8-minute long tracking shot of just traffic, or 8 minutes of civilization in its terminal phase.
In its most amazing, weird, disgusting compilations of people fighting with each other, against each other, complaining that you passed my car, and everything. It is just wild, but it is done so slowly and so French, gentle. It's just, I love that. I love the way he transitioned that whole thing from the beginning, or from the end to the beginning, where the people are actually dead. I found that is the most beautiful. There has never been a traffic pictured so beautifully in the world before.
It also has the contrast of the death and the killing, but also people playing catch with a ball, playing chess in the middle of the road.
Just like,
yeah. So it has huge contrast, and I appreciated that scene as well very much. Like, that's a scene that made a lot of sense and was very cool.
I thought it was cool that it was that long of a tracking shot and it just kept going and going and going and going. Okay, so you told me this was a comedy. I'm watching it and it's just...
And a darn funny one, too. I should have been more explicit. This is a laugh-out-loud funny comedy and a Hollywood-based comedy in so many ways. Continue. Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm not seeing how it was a comedy unless the punchline was, haha, these people got hurt. That's not funny to me. Humor is subjective.
I'm on your side, Erin.
Thank you. I have a pretty great sense of humor, I think. I like slapstick, but this is, the point of the joke is they got hurt. That is not a funny joke to me. So I'm watching it and it's just horrific.
The point of the joke is not that they got hurt. The point of the joke is that the bourgeois couple's reaction to the pain, and when they move on to the next sector, where the farmer accidentally kills the driver with his tractor, and they are having the fight over the dead man in the car between his girlfriend and the farmer, and they turn to the bourgeois couple and say, will you be witnesses? And they say, no, the two of them have to comfort each other. The man who had just killed her fiance and the woman, because of how hurt they were by the cold indifference of the bourgeois couple. How can you not find that? How could you not laugh out loud? And how well done and subtly that scene is, because you just see the two comforting each other and crying into each other's arms about how incredibly mean this couple is, our two picaros in this picaresque.
Can we agree that there's a great difference and perhaps universes between the idea of comedy and the idea of satire?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Because, and
this,
again,
for
humor
me, is not
subjective.
funny. It's not a comedy.
Thank you.
It's not funny. I
Thank you. I
understand
appreciate
that it is dissected in such a way that the weirdness of it and the weird connection from saying one thing or reacting in one way to something where we usually react in another way, we find it funny in terms of odd. But this movie in no way is funny to laugh at.
I mean, it's bizarre satire and absurdism for sure. And I've heard people describe it, and I've seen dark comedy, but I'm more on the line of Aaron and Sela. Like, there's absurdity, and maybe when you feel awkward faced with that type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people have the reaction to laugh.
Yeah, we frequently laugh out of surprise. If something happens that shocks us, a lot of times our first response is to laugh. And that's why I don't think that kind of humor is funny, because it's not actually a laugh from it being funny. It's a laugh from being shocked by it. And like, that's why I never liked the shock comedians like Andrew Dice Clay and whatnot in the 80s and 90s. I don't think that's funny. It's shocking, but that's not the same as funny. And this was, it was shocking.
Okay,
and I can
you're
see
missing
how...
my point, though, Aaron. I am not saying there isn't a difference between satire and humor. I am saying this is not satire, this is humor, and that it is based on a long-standing comedic tradition that goes all the way back to vaudeville in the United States, the Hope and Crosby road pictures that we'll talk about, where I think Godard is almost intentionally mimicking the 16-minute mark tracking shot that itself is an act of comedy. It's 8 minutes long, and it is pure Jean Renoir. I know we don't have the episode out because the recording got screwed up, but Jennifer and Aaron, you both saw how Renoir used the moving camera in La Grande Illusion. It's pure Apules without the velvet. It's as if either Renoir had given up on humanity or Apules that decided to be a nihilist. Godard is using the most sophisticated tool in the Hollywood toolkit to show the most primitive behavior on Earth. That's funny. It's the ultimate technical irony.
It's funny to you.
A civilized
it's not
camera
funny
movement.
To me.
A civilized camera movement.
No.
Okay, but it's meant to be funny, whether it's funny to you or not. Comedy isn't defined on whether it makes Aaron laugh.
Humor is subjective. You find this funny,
okay, well,
I do not. And
but
that's
you
okay.
find the act of using a sophisticated thing to show the most base, banal, objective human things funny, like that level, or what's in front of you? Because
it's the most civilized camera movement in the world.
Okay.
Yes, that it is absurd.
So that part is funny, not watching all the accidents and the death.
He didn't shoot it with a handheld camera like Breathless. He didn't shoot it documentary style. He shot it in the slickest format and shows in real time. We are watching, and you see how the camera moves ahead of the couple and then allows them to catch up, so that we're watching single scenes. And at one point, you think, oh, they put the wrong reel in or something, because it looks like the tracking shot is starting over again, but it's not. That's Godard again pulling a prank on you. It reminds me of what James Mason wrote in his poem about Max of Fools. A shot that does not call for tracks is agony for poor dear Max, who, separated from his dolly, is wrapped in deepest melancholy. Once when they took away his crane, I thought he'd never smile again. Yes, that itself is comedy. So to Sela's point, if it's satire, what is it satire?
The animalistic realm of what we call Homo sapiens.
To me, this was very mean-spirited. I don't like mean-spirited humor. I don't like that kind of thing. I don't like when the joke is somebody got hurt.
Is Godard punching up or punching down?
Up.
I think he's punching anywhere he can hit.
He's punching up. I would compare it to Monty Python. Monty Python are also punching up, but like Erin says, I don't think that they do it mean-spirited. However, I am sure that if the Catholic person doesn't have a distance to his belief or her beliefs, they will not laugh at the life of Brian because they don't have the distance to it. It doesn't matter if Monty Python is punching up and down. It doesn't matter. What matters, in my observation, is how do I stand to that topic, to that situation? Did that happen to me? It's very, very fragile. I think Godard is a nice guy. Other than that,
he's probably an asshole, but he's poopy and I hate him. But he made one good movie, Weekend, and I do love this movie. But I think I love it for the exact reason that Aaron hates it, which is that it is so cynical it comes back on itself. For instance, yes, there's blood, but it's the fakest looking blood in the world, and Godard has such a sensitive palate that he makes the blood match the red in the French flag simply so that he can use the blood as part of his metaphor of red, blue, white, black, and yellow as representing the 5 main political parties in France at the time. I think that's funnier than hell. Yes, but to Aaron's point, it is violent and it makes some scenes maybe tougher to see, but I don't think Godard's being mean-spirited by using it that way.
But for me, something funny can only be funny based on context. Nothing is funny just because it's funny. It's only funny because of the context in which we see it, meaning within a certain context or outside of a certain context, and that is what makes it funny.
I agree with that too.
There are,
yes.
For me, that film, and I thought about this especially in another wonderful long scene, and that is where this guy is playing that Mozart sonata on the piano, on the Bechstein piano. So this film for me, and I don't mean to ride on this dead horse, but to me is not really funny because I think along the middle of the film, I started thinking this guy is just throwing everything out there for the sake of making a statement that doesn't have backbones in terms of a particular story in a particular direction, even though we do see a certain direction and the movie is actually addressing them wanting to go somewhere, so there is a direction. But to me, he's just doing a couple of things thematically and visually that are just, it's a collage. And this particular situation with the piano playing and the 3 older women standing with the shadow in front of them, just standing there like farmer wives, it's just so bizarre. But it's not funny. It's just odd. And to me, the film is not really addressing one thing. It's just like experimental painting. Let me throw everything and whatever color sticks to red or to black, we'll have, depending on those colors, that's how we will see the painting. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just that I cannot really make any sensual sense of this whole thing. I can only read it as a very interesting, very creative, very talented projection of the troubles that this man has in his life. That's it.
I agree with that. I agree with the context, especially because, like, I love Monty Python, and they do weird stuff. They just throw out the weirdest stuff, but we have this shared cultural context for what they're doing. We have a basic understanding of what they're saying and why they're saying it. I speak French, but I'm not French. I love French, but I don't know nearly enough about it to understand the cultural context of what's happening in this movie. So when things happen, they just kind of happen, and I don't understand it. And I think that's another big part of why I don't find it funny.
He's throwing a lot of things, but I feel like he's throwing a ton of shade against the bourgeois, against the capitalism, against what's happening. You could see that, but I think it was, you said he didn't have a hate or a disdain for it. And I feel like
because
that does
the
sort of come through.
are actually shown in to go back to the Engels, to Friedrich Engels, the communists are actually the barbarians.
The ones eating people.
That's
They're
barbarism.
the cannibals.
That's when, Yeah, according to Engels, barbarism was the era where people learned how to exploit other people, and it's the communists who are actually doing the exploiting. They physically are exploiting human beings for their meat. But this is just one last film where Godard is saying a curse on all your houses. I don't care if it's capitalism, communism, fascism, fuck all the isms. Human beings cannot be trusted with government. And so nihilism would be the only ism that comes out of Weekend looking good, which is that, I don't need any of these.
That sort of makes sense with what Sela said about the era of how chaotic the world was between 1965 and 1970, whatever. But like this era of the world.
5 months after Weekend was released, what changed and why Godard switched from nihilism to Maoism were the French student protests that would throw Charles de Gaulle out of power, shut down the Cannes Film Festival, and you had Francois Truffaut and you had Jean-Luc Godard joining with the students and attempting to pretty much reshape France as a communist dictatorship. Literally, you had strikers saying, I refuse to go back to work until there's a dictatorship installed in France of the Soviet variety. And all of that was going on, like I said, five months after Weekend was released. So this was the atmosphere that Godard was filming Weekend in.
I think without knowing history to the level I would like to know it, I trust Bergman, Scorsese, Lynch, Godard, that when they address such a convoluted topic or complex topic and difficult topic, especially addressing it from different levels of society and different perspectives, not just political but also religious. I don't have to agree with it, but that they have a mature organization of their thoughts to be able to express in their films what they're expressing. And I think in part it's important to, similar to an experience that I have for the last 6 years, to be able to converse with people who have extremely different political views than mine. But to me, it is interesting and essential, but mostly interesting to simply find out what these people are about. And to find out, in this case, perhaps to get a little bit close to what Godard is actually for a person who needs to say what he says. It's not just about the political situation globally in the 60s and the 70s, but how does Godard experience that? Because of the mother he has, because of the wife he has, because he lost his testicles when he did, whatever had happened in his life. I think, and I've said that many times in these shows, I think it's always very interesting and perhaps very important to consider, not to know, but to consider what the hell was this guy thinking about. I might understand it or not, but they always have been thinking about certain things to do what they do.
I mean, I think that's a great point. Well said, Sela. I agree.
I don't want to understand Godard's perspective because while I don't consider Weekend to be a mean-spirited film, I consider Godard to be a mean-spirited person.
But understanding his perspective doesn't mean you own it, but understanding it allows you to agree whether I would push back. I mean, I think there's a level of understanding it, and then you can make your own choice, and you don't have to agree with it. You don't align with it, but having a sense of where someone's coming from or finding that understanding is part of, I don't know, I think an important part of humanity and shared humanity.
When I say, to me, it's important to understand what Bergman or Godard is doing, I don't mean understand what they're doing, but understand that they, and that's what I think I said, to understand that they individually, personally have the reasons for doing what they did. Not understand what they did, but to understand that they did it for a certain reason that could be legitimate. So I really don't want to be able to understand David Lynch. I would kill myself. But I love the fact that I accept that he had his reasons for doing what he did.
And the other thing that I would point out when it comes to Godard's film is that he was someone who had a great respect for the art of cinema. When he was creating these films, he was creating something for me, the cinephile. You know, for instance, the code names, the searchers calling Johnny Guitar. Well, you know, I'm thinking John Ford, Nicholas Ray. Thank you, Jean-Luc. I, as the little film nerd who, when I first saw this film in high school, were going, I saw that movie. I know what he means by that. I'm like Captain America. I understood that reference, and the fact that he's constantly and the fact that he is using Fools and Renoir in that traffic jam to show this inhumanity by using these sophisticated and beautiful tracking shots. To me, is another sign of what I love about Godard.
That I get. I understand that the cinephile in you appreciated that. I'm playing at the Godard being poopy, and I love about Godard, which all those things can be true about lots of people, but
yeah, I was about to ask, even though he's poopy?
I'm trying to catch up. I mean, have you been duping me this whole time? Is that where you're going? Like you're dragging me along this road to try to see if we would love Godard in the end, or you don't like the other films, you like this film? I'm confused, honestly.
He's poopy and I hate him, but I did love the movie Weekend.
I don't want any more food. Hey, will you cut out that chirping? You drive me crazy in this chicken coop. These guys dancing and beating those drums for days. If they're gonna eat us, why don't they do it and get it over with?
Don't be in a hurry, boy. You'll be brisket of beef soon enough.
Imagine me on the 65-cent blue plate.
I think you're slated for the businessman's lunch.
Fearless Fraser, the human meatball. I gotta get out of here. There must be some way to...
Look out, look out. They'll grab an hors d'oeuvre up. Well, pardon yourself.
Must have been somebody you ate.
That's life. Here today and just a burp tomorrow.
You hear that? That's the origins of Weekend in 1941. That's Bing Crosby and Bob Hope on a quest. But Godard took that Hope Crosby movie, the cameos, the winks, the breaking the fourth wall, and performed an autopsy on it. The characters in this film repeatedly remind us that they know that they are in a movie. For instance, someone drives by and says, "Are you in a movie or real life?" And the guy says, "Well, we're in a movie." And they say, "Well, movies are a lie," and drive off. And another time he says, "All the people in this movie are crazy." And when they go to and when they go to burn Emily Bronte, he says, "Don't worry, she's an imaginary character." Well, that's not Brecht. That's not the epic theater. That is literally Bob Hope and Bing Crosby in 1941 when they were captured by cannibals in Road to Zanzibar, playing patty cake and turning to the camera and saying, "No, that was a different movie."
You in this picture? No, taking a shortcut to stage 10.
Just like Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, which I don't think anyone is going to say that the Road to Zanzibar had a complicated plot, and yet it has the exact same plot as Weekend. We have to go to the place to do the thing, and shit gets in our way. Also, at the end of Road to Zanzibar, guess what? They encounter cannibals. Now, you're going to tell me that Godard just accidentally made a film that follows the almost exact same road as Road to Zanzibar? It could be. I find it unlikely. The other thing that he did is he took the amusement park ride element of a Bing Crosby, Bob Hope road movie and turned it into an inventory of the wreckage to Scylla's point of human civilization.
Patty cake, baker's man. Bake a cake as fast as you...
Them acknowledging they're in a movie is probably the only thing I actually laughed at with this movie. Yeah, it might be inspired by the road movies, but at the same time, if you can define the plot that loosely, it could have been inspired by any movie. I mean, everything is... I mean, it can be boiled down to a stranger comes to town or a man goes on a journey. Well, this is them going on a journey. Anything can be boiled down to those two plot items. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's not the exact same plot. It's just along the same lines.
He is throwing as an homage or as a criticism or as a instrument to build his story. He's throwing Buñuel in there. He's throwing all kinds of films in there, which is making sense for the end of cinema.
One of the biggest features of those was the cameo. Anybody and everybody who was famous made some sort of a cameo appearance in a Road to movie, and it was always in some odd situation. Here we have the face of the new wave himself, Jean-Pierre Léaud. Locked in a box like a bird in a cage. Godard made the man who was Antoine Donnel a cameo star, just like in a Road to picture, only here he's just an obstacle in a jam. He even took massive TV stars like Mireille Darc, think of her as like the Jennifer Aniston of 1960s France, and turned her into a cannibal. Everyone in that theater knew her face from their living room, and they expected yet another breezy romantic comedy, and Godard gave them a butcher's shop. And don't forget about Jean Yon. Think of him as kind of the John Hamm of the French New Wave. You take the most alpha guy on TV, the guy every man wants to be, and you turn him into a pathetic, bickering animal trapped in a car. It's not just a movie, it's a public execution of a TV brand.
If you don't know who those people are, you're not going to get the joke.
Which is what classifies such films on a nerdy level. I think it's necessary to have such art, but it's one of those art forms that if you're not informed, if you're not aware of that culture, if you're not aware of certain important individuals or certain points of history, then you will not get what the movie's saying. I think the moment that I found maybe I should watch the movie again, although I don't want to, the one scene that I remember clearly that I found satirically funny. It was not, I did not laugh, but I really saw the clear intentionality of, I'm going to make something humorous here, is the reaction of the woman who's been ranting about her boyfriend being dead and he was rich and this and that and you're a farmer and you're nobody, and suddenly because she doesn't get to write with the other two, she becomes nice with the farmer. The fact that they embrace and they console each other, that I found really, really weird and funny, because that it is just so clearly written. That's just weird. But other than that, I don't remember any comedic. The poet, the philosopher woman with her boyfriend or my love, she never called him by name. She always said
Emily Bronte.
Yeah, that was a very beautiful presentation, display of things going on, poetry, philosophy, politics, the couple looking to get to that town and they don't respond. And I thought it was a great dynamic that was going on between these four, and they had no way of conversing in any way. But I do not call it funny. I do not call it humor, and to me that was also not satirical. It was just a very odd putting together of situations for the sake of, I think I tend to go a lot more with the Buñuel direction. It was just actually surreal, and the storyline is surreal, and the things that are thrown onto palette is surreal. There's a lot of criticism, but for me, there's not really a lot of connection.
Buñuel laugh out loud funny.
But Simon of the Desert, it doesn't matter where you stand.
Laugh out loud
It's really funny. It's really funny. You might not laugh, but it is funny. But that's his language, and that's his starting point.
Well, and we did the episode on March to Or, and we were, if you listen back to it, we were, the three of us were rolling on the floor laughing.
Andalusian dog, I wouldn't call that funny, but it is...
Not funny.
I don't know.
It's a comedy, but it's not a funny
It's a different language.
The joke.
You know, Godard has a very particular language that I just don't know where to place it. I just don't know where to place it. Well, yeah, he's a movie and I hate him.
But he made a good movie. It was called Weekend. Back to the road to Zanzibar. The cannibal is a prop designed to be outsmarted with the patty cake gag. But Godard flips the script. In Weekend, the star doesn't escape the pot. She pulls up a chair. When Mary Dark asks for leftovers of her own husband, the amusement park ride is over. The socialist dream has been digested. Now, the French Communist Party, those poopy bureaucrats, would rather see these cannibals as heroes. They rejected this film because they wanted a revolutionary win so badly they didn't care who was in the pot. They called Godard bourgeois, which, as we pointed out, he was. But they wanted working-class heroes in his films set in factories being happy in their factories. But thanks to the PCF, meat was back on the menu. But Godard is being subtle. He summarizes angles to show us that barbarism is the stage where we start producing through the subjugation of others. The Liberation Front isn't savagery. They are a highly organized barbarism where the raw material is the bourgeois husband. They are the equivalent of the French Communist Party. And Godard's point is the French Communist Party is there to eat their own. And this is where what I call the natural ally argument is so toxic. My fellow liberals see weird shit in the woods, and they want to sympathize. But look at the specifics. If that weird shit includes only repeating the party line verbatim, it's not art. It's a kitchen where a menu is being written in blood, as the cannibals do in this film. So I'm sticking with the right for everyone to eat without having to be turned into a broth. And if you can't see the difference between common decency and a cooking pot, then I suppose I will see you in the soup.
Her buying into it, like her accepting, there was a level of accepting, which she did multiple times. I have to do what I need to do to get along or to get by or to fit in where I am or to survive. So I saw her as an opportunistic adapter, that character. So I wasn't that shocked that she was. You had to explain to me here and in other ways, who she was as an actor and as a public figure and a characterized actor, that it was even more absurd that this girl next door or everybody likes her in your living room is eating her husband and wanting seconds of eating her husband. Yeah, I thought there was a lot of horrificness with slaughter and eating and meat. And I didn't know if there were other... I thought that was sort of the capitalistic bourgeois type stuff that he was getting at. But then I also thought that there was this crazy symbolism through, like with the slaughtering the other human and the blood on the rabbit and it was all just part of some... He was making statements. I don't know that I got them all. I know that I did not get all of the film context statements, the political context statements of this film. Having them explained, discussing them, I am a nerdy cinephile geek that enjoys when people put parts of stories in context and gives me explanation. So that part I've appreciated, and I still appreciate with this, and I'm eager to hear what my other compatriots here on the panel think about it. I thought there was a little bit of odd humor in the scene of her, not a milk mustache, but like a blood mustache, little grin or whatever of, yeah, and I want more. So save me some for later. I did see the dark humor in that.
Well, I think if you watch The Road to Zanzibar and read Friedrich Engels' The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State, that would be a good primer for the humor in Weekend. So I'm not saying one of those is an easier task than the other, but
I remember
have
seeing
at
The
it,
Road
Jennifer.
to Zanzibar earlier, and I had not thought about that. And my brain can recall the scenes you're talking about and seeing some humor in that of them playing patty cake. But those actors were sort of comedic actors often, right, from that period of my life. But I hadn't thought about that. I would not have remembered that unless you brought it up. But I have seen that film, and I don't know, probably more than once with my dad, I think. But I see the humor in that, so I get that.
My belly was already overfilled with Godard by the time she was eating her husband. I'm looking at a picture, one of the several pictures I took from the film. It says, well, the translation is when she's looking at this little pebble or stone, and says, among other things, she says, ignored by architecture, sculpture, mosaic, and jewelry. With the exception of very extended shots, like the traffic jam and the guy playing on the Bechstein piano, this film might be just a throwing things on the canvas and just display a collage of what I am disturbed by in life in the 60s, and I'll just make it a film because I'm a filmmaker. And there are many, many beautiful moments, beautiful shots, beautiful expressions, very interesting references to politics, to the times, to many things. But when I look at this particular quotation, ignored by architecture, sculpture, and mosaic, which is true, basically she's saying this little pebble here has been ignored by the whole human race, and that's why it's still here. That statement says nothing, but it is very poetic in itself, and it's very real, existential, and that's how I see the movie for the most part. But when it came to eating her husband, I couldn't keep up anymore. I don't know what that means. I really don't know. Neither do I know. Well, actually,
you got Godard. You got Godarded out.
Yeah, it makes sense in Green Tomatoes. In that context, it makes sense. But in this sense, I thought it was a little bit, he went too far. But I just thought of something else. There are certain implications and direct statements made in the film where I say to myself, that is speaking of the value that I see in society, and I'm a little bit confused as to where you stand when it comes to that value.
By the time we got to that point, I was done trying to figure out what anything meant. So the thoughts on that are the thoughts I have on the movie as a whole. In the words of the Dread Black Pete from Our Flag Means Death.
What is even happening right now?
I know.
I just didn't understand it. It was a thing that happened, and I saw it. And that's most I can say about it.
That's exactly why I sent you the text, I'm thinking about you. Because I knew that yesterday at some point you were suffering by watching this movie.
I appreciate that, Sela.
I regret nothing. I regret nothing. You have to go through Godard in order to appreciate Fellini and Tonioni and Truffaut. You have to experience the negative side of the world independent cinema movement to understand the beauty of when people do it right.
So basically everything is good compared to Godard.
Pretty much. Except I like this movie. I think he did a great job with it. I love it. But I love it on the same way I love Coonskin, Ken Russell's The Devils, or what have you, as a mischievous piece of cinema which had it coming. Godard is the most influential filmmaker in the history of film, and this was his fin du cinema. This was the last of what he would call his narrative films before he decided that Maoism was more important than movie making. And this, by a long shot, is his most influential film. And when we get to the summing up of this series at the end of this episode, the world would not be the same, or media, at least in the world, would not be the same had Godard never made this film. And so it is an important piece of cinema. It was a pleasant experience for me to rewatch it because I found it funny, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be pleasant for everyone, but I think it is a necessary view. I don't think you can understand cinema post-1967 in any country in the world without first seeing Weekend. And so I regret nothing.
And it's good that I've seen it now and never have to watch it again.
The drummer, I love the drummer. That was so cool. And then when it switches drummers and it keeps the exact same beat.
I love this movie. The drummer was interesting. I agree. That part was funky. This has been an experience, and I need to understand and learn more and hear more to understand different perspectives as to why this is a great piece of cinema. So you're going to finish tying in all the Road to Godard things and all the references, which you just said. Like, I have to have seen this and seen other films to have all these puzzle pieces make sense. So to that end, I am glad for watching it and understanding.
Well, and even without me spoon feeding it to you, you can see the connections between these films, right? You can see how Godard has sneakily weaved his way into cinema so much that you can no longer extract him. You know, you can't watch Tuki Buki or Black Girl or Coonskin or Gunfighter Paradise without seeing Godard now, I would hope.
Yes, there's a level of that for sure. I mean, there was one thing I went down a rabbit hole on I'm not even be able to look it up, on the jump cut. But they're saying that some person from the 1800s did it first, but that
Malay.
That was Malay, but that Godard did it consciously and purposely versus doing it accidentally.
And that's why I always say he popularized. He didn't invent. There were jump cuts in Orpheus, remember, in Blood of a Poet. But that's why I say I don't ever say he invented anything. He didn't invent any of these things. He popularized them. That's my point. He put them into popular cinema because Breathless was a huge hit. You know, A Woman is a Woman is a huge hit. Pierre Lafaut was a huge hit. This one wasn't. At the time, it has been now. I'm not in a minority here. This has like a 92% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, of all places.
I think it's even higher than that. Yeah.
I'm not in a minority on this film. This isn't some weird, I didn't pull out some Kenneth Anger weirdo AFI film from the 1960s or something like that. This is mainstream considered great cinema. I'm not in a minority.
No, yeah, I get it.
This is high camp. We've gone from the beautiful corpse of Children of Paradise to the smoking wreckage of Weekend. 6 months after Weekend was released, French students began a protest that would eventually see Charles de Gaulle fall from power. Godard would then turn his back on narrative cinema, forming the Ziga Vertov group with Jean-Pierre Gorin, and dedicating himself to making political films and regurgitating Maoist groupthink. In a way, the ending title card was correct. This was the end of cinema, at least as we had come to know it. A great number of beautiful films were made in the coming years, but the subjective cinema that Godard had popularized was fini. But as we wrap up this series, let's take a look at the films we've watched so far this year and see how they either inspired Godard or were inspired by his popular use of these subjective innovations. We'll start with 1937's Le Grand Illusion, the starting point. Renoir gave us a blueprint for the social contract, a humanism where borders and classes are the only real villain. Godard took the humanism and chewed it up and spat it out on the side of a French highway. You can't have the wreckage of weekends without first having the elegant, crumbling structures of 1937. Also, those long tracking shots. 1945, Children of Paradise, a beautiful corpse for Godard to react against. His films would do everything the opposite way. Carnet filmed in a studio, Godard would film on location. Carnet worked with Prévert to craft delicate dialogue. Godard would use improvisation, and the dialogue would serve only to make his political points. The Orpheus trilogy, 1930, 1950, and 1960. Cocteau showed Godard the way by creating an intimate and subjective look at his own subconscious, using the ancient Greek myth as his slender hanger for an oversized wardrobe. Breathless, 1960. The granddaddy of them all. The use of the jump cuts and improvisation set the standard for the future of independent cinema. Black Girl, 1966. Ousmane Sanben, trained by the Soviets, created an openly leftist political cinema for Africa by following Godard's lead. Weekend, 1967. Fin du cinema. He finally got enough guts to blow the whole thing up. Stealing the main idea from Julio Cortázar, Bob Hope, and Bing Crosby, it was the end of the road for subjective cinema. Tuki Buki, 1973. Breathless in Dakar. Membetti took the keys from Godard and used them to unlock African movies. Coonskin, 1975. Ralph Bakshi's knowing satire and nihilistic reframing of Americana used the same techniques Godard popularized to bring to America the French New Wave. CSA, Confederate States of America. Kevin Wilmot created an openly political mockumentary that, like Godard, played on the very media tropes which had been used to keep our oppressors in power. And last but not least, Gunfighter Paradise. Jethro Waters eschewed narrative in favor of character study to create a political work that again questioned the status quo by reenacting the rebellion through the very tropes it sought to satirize.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad it's over, although there were some films that we watched that I really did enjoy a lot. I like seeing how it all ties together, but I also, now that we're done with it, I'm gonna
let me ask you this. Do you now understand what I'm making fun of whenever I say the French can't make a good movie?
Yeah, to a degree, yeah. I just think
if that's the only thing you got out of it, then it was worth it. Now you understand why we're a world cinema history podcast that took this long to cover the French.
Yeah, it took a while, but yeah, I'm totally gonna go watch something that I don't have to think too hard about, just as a palate cleanser before we move on to Sela's movie for the next episode, because there was so much to those movies, and some of them were, again, some I really, really, really loved, like CSA and Gunfighter Paradise. Those were amazing. I liked most of them, and there were some that I'm just like, I don't ever need to see these again. And Weekend was one of those. And Breathless is another. But I'm glad to have seen them so that I know what it is that's out there, that whether I like it or not, it's influential, it's important, and it's artistic, and there are people that enjoy it. So I think that's my takeaway.
Even though we don't get informed when we are 16, 17, and so around that age, to know that when we go to college, when we go off to college, we are not going to gain any experience, but we're just getting the instruments to be able to start gaining experience in the workplace. And to me, this idea of podcast has something to it in the same way. The way you built up to this, the way you organized it in terms of the reference points and the historical connections, cinema as a fluent thing, to me, it's a possibility now to look at films with a different perspective. Not that I didn't do it before, but this allows me yet another angle of how to study one film or a period of films or a country making films, different things, just to see how detailed connections could be put together. I don't know how much is in the awareness of all these individuals to have done that, because a lot of the things that I do are taken from other people or from other situations, and I'm not even aware of that because I have probably internalized certain things in a certain way. So I'm not even aware that when I make this piece or that piece, or I cook that or cook that I'm actually connecting with a certain thing that I experienced with my grandmother when I was 7. I might not be aware of that, but to go through these months of going in this direction opens my eyes to understanding that this is a very well existing system in place, and that I could have access to it by having gone through it. So I'm very thankful for that.
And where can people find you on the internet, Sheila?
I am still at SilaBlume.life with pictures and poems and biographies, and at the moment, quite a few thoughts about my father,
who would have had a birthday this month, correct?
Actually, he died on the 11th and was born on the 21st. So within 10 days, I go from backwards, from beginning to end.
I'm sorry to hear that, but looking forward to reading your reflections on it.
It's not so bad, because Johann Sebastian Bach was born the same day.
The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Jennifer Trujillo, where can people find you in the Gilbert Baker Film Festival on the internet?
Gilbert Baker Film Festival.lgbt, on Instagram, Gilbert Baker Film Fest. And on both of those places, you can find a link tree with links to all things, all the socials, and all the ways to get in touch with Gilbert Baker Film Festival and me. So reach out or touch base.
And Aaron Brown, where can people find you and our podcast on the interwebs?
You can find me on Blue Sky at Toad Puppy, and on YouTube at Pizza Horse Productions. And you can find the podcast at ko-fi.com/worldcinemahistory. Come check us out. We've got all of our past episodes. We've got places for you to comment, places for you to leave a tip so we can, remain ad-free and maybe upgrade our equipment. And yeah, come check us out.
Thanks, Aaron. And you can find me at the artist formerly known as Twitter at ETROMMATER, or you can join the discussion over on Facebook. We have our own Facebook group called World Cinema History Podcast Group. So hope to see you there. Next week, Sila Blume will be sitting in the host chair, and I will be the smartass throwing remarks at him. Sila, what film are you going to take us through?
We are going to be conversing about a fantastic director called Ingmar Bergman with his film Passion of Anna. Quite a typical Bergman, and yet a little bit different.
And dare I say, somewhat influenced by Godard's Weekend. But that's for next week. And the week after that...
You had to throw that one in there.
I did. I'm just a brat. I can't help myself. And then the week after that, we will be looking at a Fellini film called Evitelloni, which was the inspiration for so many American films in the 1970s and 80s, such as Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets, George Lucas's American Graffiti, and Barry Levinson's Diner. That will be a palate cleanser from The Road to Godard and the existential dread of Ingmar Bergman. We're going to have some fun with Fellini and Evitelloni. So join us next week for Passion of Anna, and join us the week after that for Fellini's Evitelloni. And thank you for listening to World Cinema History.